welcome, everyone. I'm Ryan Heckman, the CEO of Rally Day Partners, and this is the Founder's Journey podcast. We'll explore the heart and soul of great founders and their journey to build the company of their dreams. You will learn about new industries and business models while discovering how to apply the founder's mindset to your everyday work and life. Welcome to the Rally Day Partners Founder's Journey podcast, number 2. And not to say that Cindy Jordan is number 2, because she's number 1 in my heart. I think if you were to poll the Rally Day team, we would all say Cindy Jordan is by far and away the most amazing entrepreneur founder we have ever worked with. If it was a class president at Rally Day, Cindy Jordan would be our class president. If there was someone was our muse, we would all say Cindy Jordan's our muse. If you were to ask me, I would say Cindy Jordan is one of my great role models. So I'm really, really proud to welcome Cindy Jordan, Pix Health, to the Rally Day Partners podcast. Welcome, Cindy.
Thank you, Ryan. And I really appreciate that, setting the bar high, but I kind of like that.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah,
you do. Why don't we start with the normal stuff a little bit here and talk to us about your company, Pix Health, what you do, why you do it, how you do it, and maybe a little bit of the journey about building the business, which for you, I know, is that intersection of professional objective and personal journey. But let's at least allow our listeners to know what kind of business you built and why it's so important to our country.
Well, thanks. Yeah. So, Ryan, as you know, this is actually my second healthcare IT startup company. The first one I sold early, just off of literally a little over $1 million in angel money. So that would be, everyone would have considered what I did in my first one an early exit. I wasn't sure I really wanted to get back into healthcare because compliance, et cetera, et cetera. But long story longer, this is a very personal journey for me. My stepdaughter in 2017 was diagnosed with bipolar and ended up in an inpatient facility. And like most entrepreneurs, I like to fix things. And so I was always sort of, asking her, what comes first? Like, what can I fix? Like, what are the early detection warning signs? And she would talk about being lonely. And in 2017, before the pandemic hit, that didn't make sense to me. Because, to me, lonely was being alone. And she wasn't alone. She lived with a roommate. She went to college. She came to family dinner. There was all that in there. So I became sort of obsessed with loneliness and researching it, and decided that it was enough of a pull to jump back into the fray and start a second business. And this business is addressing loneliness. And we deliberately, from the get, knew that we wanted to build a company inside of the healthcare system, meaning leveraging health insurance payers, providers, et cetera, to pay for a service that would help those who needed it the most address chronic loneliness and isolation.
And started in 2018, right?
Yep.
And evangelical in many ways, early years, in terms of tying loneliness to the acuity and frequency of healthcare encounters. Tell us about where you were then and where you are now, particularly in terms of validating the outcomes of your business model. And you might want to touch on I call it the Reese's peanut butter cup of wrapping a 24/7 app that's highly scalable with the personal touch of your Andes. And just touch a bit on that, if you don't mind, just to give our listeners an idea of just how, I would say, impactful and differentiated your business is.
Okay. Well, I'll start with the model, and then I'll go back of where we were then and how we were selling and where we are now. But the model's simple. When we first launched, like many entrepreneurs, we just launched with pure tech. And we knew we were going to keep people company and hopefully help them get themselves back to better health. Candidly, at the time, there wasn't all the science that there is now around loneliness. So we wanted to do something good, but we weren't exactly sure. So we launched a minimum viable product because as I explained, I had another company in healthcare IT. I went to a CEO that I knew well who happened to be in Medicaid. And for listeners that don't know about Medicaid, Medicaid is a highly competitive bid process. So if you're a health plan that covers Medicaid members, once every 3 to 5 years, your state goes out to bid. And you winning that bid is hard and it's competitive. And she happened to be, when I reached out to her to kind of bounce the idea of addressing loneliness with her members, she's like, oh my gosh, perfect timing. I'm in a bid process. And this is the exact kind of thinking and innovation that we need. So I had a customer before I even had a solid idea of how we were going to do this. So we launched with just a platform. And within, I'd say, a month, it became very clear that you cannot address something as intimate, and I'm using that word deliberately, as loneliness with just tech. And candidly, there are few things in the mental behavioral health space that you should be addressing with just tech. So we knew, and this is when the peanut butter and chocolate came together, because at that point it was just a jar of peanut butter. And, now we were going to add the chocolate, is we had to add humans. And our humans are peer mentors in the classic sense, as you may know of them. And there's been peer mentors, at least post-pandemic, have been highly researched as incredibly effective for many things, including gaps in care and mental health. But back then, it was also, just like loneliness was kind of cutting edge, using peers was cutting edge. And we call our peers Andy. And that stands for authentic, nurturing, dependable, your friend. So that's the model. It's a tech-enabled services business for anybody out there who's going to want to put us into a multiple bucket. But we were selling just exclusively off of, hey, it makes common sense. If your members are lonely, then they're going to overutilize the system in a way that you, Mr. Health Insurance Plan, do not want to pay for. And then in late 2018, a study came out from Becker's that followed these 42 members who were responsible for over $5 million in spend in Texas in emergency room visits. And because it was only 42 of them, they could talk to each one of them individually and really start to understand, why are you going to the emergency room so much? And the answer was because they were lonely. One gentleman even mentioned something about like Meatloaf Tuesday or something. You know what I mean? So that was how we originally sold. But the market has dramatically changed. Enter in a worldwide pandemic. CMS is at the point now where they're not tolerating health plans that aren't completely integrated between physical health, mental health, and social health. And that is where everything is moving. Health-related social needs are being identified as one of the most incredible barriers to wellness, good health. And so what CMS has started doing is that they've become billable services. And loneliness is squarely in these social health needs, meaning I am not going to tell you I don't have food in my refrigerator, or I don't have a shower seat and haven't taken a shower in 2 weeks, or I haven't taken my medicine in 2 months unless I trust you. And the way to earn trust is to help these folks through chronic loneliness. So now we sell really differently.
Well, and I would say more easily. I mean, I can only imagine those early years. You must have felt like you were selling snake oil or, something that people probably couldn't get their minds or hearts around. And now fast forward, talk to us about the Surgeon General and what has happened there that has only helped you in terms of, validating the need and the power of your solution.
Yeah, I mean, the Surgeon General, this is sort of like his passion project is loneliness, and he's written about it and he's talked about it very publicly. And he's raised the consciousness, I'd say, of not just the healthcare system, but of America around what loneliness is and how deadly and dangerous it is. When someone's suffering from chronic loneliness, they have a 26% increased rate of mortality. That is huge. That is huge. But, one of the things the Surgeon General has not done is really drawn attention to the fact that loneliness can be diagnosed with an evidence-based screening, just like depression. Loneliness actually has a physical response in the brain. It rewires the brain into believing that no one can help you, not your medicine, not your doctor, not your family. And so you start to recluse. So you can see why it's so deadly. And it can be treated. And so what I would do is say, I really appreciate what the Surgeon General is doing, but PICS is trying to take it a step further, which is to say that loneliness is a diagnosable, treatable condition, and it needs to be recognized as such with billing codes, et cetera. So he's done a great job of kind of getting the masses acquainted with loneliness as a thing and not just a feeling. But I'm very interested in taking it that extra step.
I love that. And I actually haven't heard that expression come out of your mouth before. We've spent a lot of time together, which we're going to get into. But like loneliness as a feeling, I think we can all identify with. But loneliness as a disease that leads to other comorbidities,
yep,
is scientifically proven. And I think what's super cool about your company, Pix Health, is that you're actually tip of the spear in terms of our country's awareness to the fact that loneliness spills over into so many aspects of our healthcare system. Is it for you a little validating, or like, I told you so? Or is it just never enough in other words, are you just going to keep fighting like you always have to say, you guys, like, this is a thing and it's real, and it has, never mind the patient and their families involved, but also our society. I mean, where are you in terms of how you're feeling about our awareness of this whole thing?
Well, I think awareness is growing, and that's good. I think, though, it's a dangerous message to say that if you're lonely, you can just pick up the phone and call a friend and you're going to be fixed. Because that, for folks who are suffering from chronic loneliness, that's not possible. It just the same way as folks who are suffering from chronic depression, you can't just make them feel good one day and expect depression to go away. It's not how it works. So, I mean, I still feel like I have a little bit of a chip on my shoulder around loneliness, and I kind of like it. I'm not really interested in getting rid of it. I mean, Ryan, you know this, but for anybody who's listening, my daughter, who I referred to, Riley, she ended up passing away, and she died of an overdose. But the loneliness, she is that one person that had that 26% increase of mortality, because the last text, one of the last text string that she sent anyone in the world, she talked about being lonely. And here at this point, because this was 2021, we're in it. We have a company. We're trying to help folks out there. She was a part of our company for a period of time. We had just taken some private equity money, i.e. you guys. And, 2 weeks later, she died. And so do I feel like we're anywhere near understanding? No. Mm-mm. And am I still super passionate about screaming it from the mountaintops? I am, because I know that there are 1 in 3 families who have lost children who would tell you that loneliness was central to that loss. It may not, you can't say, oh, I did an autopsy and she died of loneliness. That's not going to show up. But you certainly can say that it's paramount in what led to those kind of tragic outcomes.
I would say, I think when the Surgeon General got on board, I started to feel like maybe Cindy's chip on her shoulder was gonna like get a little more level. But we wouldn't love you like we do if we didn't also love that chip on your shoulder. And I love that you talk about that. Let's segue into the fun stuff, which is more biographical. Before I started this conversation, I was thinking about you. I also got some feedback or some, I guess, input on how my colleagues at Rally Day Partners would describe you, which is going to make you blush.
Okay.
But you and I had a very unique relationship. And for those listeners, we got to work with Cindy and her team for about 3 years. And, when you're building a business like this, that's going from subscale to full scale very quickly, backing a founder like Cindy, it's everybody in the trenches together. And I was trying to think of the way to describe our relationship, and forgive me if this is weird, but I would describe us as siblings. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know who's older, but I'll presume for this description that you're my older sister. But I remember a time we were at a board dinner, and I had recently encountered a lot of gray hair in my hair, and I was going to go get engaged. And I went to the barber shop, and they were like, if you're going to get engaged, you should get rid of that gray hair. So I had my hair, darkened to get rid of the gray hair. And I didn't think anyone was going to notice, And we show up at the board dinner, and you whisper in my ear, you go, "Hey, dude, what's with the black hair, and what happened to your hair?" And I was so embarrassed. But that's just so quintessential Cindy in terms of, like, we're all human, we all have humor, and business is serious, and what we were trying to accomplish was big, but it doesn't mean that we can't have fun and, grow together in a way that has a lot of humor. We could easily have had a conversation that was about the business, but, our relationship was really special, and I got to be more of an equal with you in the best way. I wasn't the typical private equity guy with you. You always told it to me straight. I always told it to you straight. And we both, I'd say, became better versions of ourselves as we were building this business together. Tell me where that comes from, because there aren't many CEOs in the world of private equity that are going to like call me out on, me being so vain.
Well, firstly, it looked good.
Thank you.
But to your point, I was just like, hey, what are you doing that for? Why are you done your no, Ryan, I think it comes back to authenticity. And one of the things that I think I've done my entire life is struggle with the fact that authenticity is missing from business. And if you'll ask anybody on the street who's in our space, entrepreneurship, venture capital, private equity, and say, hey, is authenticity, first and foremost in that business? Everyone would say no. But what I found at Rally Day is a home where I could be authentic. But I would hope that even before you made the investment that I was that way to begin with, because now that we have new private equity partners, I think one of the things they say to me all the time is like, even when I have to deliver not great news, like if we miss a number or something, or one of the KPIs is off, they're like, well, God, thanks for telling us. We usually don't hear until it's 3 weeks from disaster. But this really goes back to my roots. My first job out of college, I was a police officer. And while that is a noble profession, I did not like it. And I didn't like it for a lot of reasons. But one of them is that in a paramilitary organization like that, like being your authentic self is completely not only frowned upon, but almost like, browbeaten out of you. And so I spent my life trying to find a place, and entrepreneurship is where I landed, where I could be me. And it sometimes works in my favor and sometimes doesn't. Like I didn't know. I mean, it makes me feel bad that I embarrassed you actually. So there's a little give and take, but if I had to say anything about the industry in general and I'm batting 1,000 right now because I've had 2 PE partners who let me be me. And in fact, more than that, they embrace it. And so to me, that's the Quan.
I would agree with that. And I want to double click on asking, because I think one of the things about vulnerability and authenticity is a lot of people in business feel like they're in a straitjacket. I certainly was one of those people. I kind of came into the back door of my industry just as you did, Cindy. I wasn't a DC cop, which we're gonna dive into a bit more, but I might as well have been. And I think that sometimes we feel like people don't accept us for who we are, but I also feel like sometimes we don't ask people to. And there's a little bit of confidence in there that's required to create that relationship that's real. And I would agree with you. I mean, one of the reasons that we invested in Pix was your, realness. And we call it aggressive humility. It's sort of this combination of somebody who is super aggressive, which we know a lot of people in our lives that are that person. But also humble. We also know people in our lives that are very humble but not aggressive. But like that combo is super powerful. And in your case, Pix was you. And Rally Day made a decision that we were going to ignore the numbers and invest in first your vision and the problem, the global problem, the biological problem that you were going to solve, and that you were the vessel to solve it. We knew the dimension of the problem. We knew that you were the vessel to solve it. And it took a massive leap of faith. But it never felt scary. And it's because you were so real, and I would just say, I think that is where being a DC cop paid a lot of dividends. One of your favorite admirers, Nancy Phillips, when I asked her favorite thing about Cindy Jordan, I'll read you what she said, if you don't mind. She had a lot to say, but this is my favorite. She said, Cindy had the power of belief. She has an enduring belief in herself and the people around her. She's a magnet for talent and loyalty. People love to be around Cindy. She's fun. She's provocative. She pushes everyone around her beyond their limits. And they have incredible curiosity and a growth mindset because of Cindy Jordan. And when I think about that compliment that Nancy Phillips, who, by the way, gives me more shit than you do, I thought that really hit it on its head. Why don't we talk about where that came from? Double click on you in DC. You're a cop, which, by the way, for those of you who don't know, how tall are you, Cindy?
5'5".
5'5". So, like, it's actually funny to watch. What was it, Cagney and Lacey? What was the show that was? Anyway, the point is, you're not a very likely cop.
The Return?
Yeah, you're not we're getting a fact checked over here, but you're not a very quintessential cop. Talk to us about how you became a cop and what you learned from your time on the street.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a super blue collar family. And in fact, when I told my mom I wanted to go to college, and not that she wasn't supportive of me, but her answer was, why? Like, what, in other words, I was expected to graduate high school and get a job and, like my grandfather did and be at it for 40 years or whatever it was going to be. And candidly, had I not been an athlete, because I went to school on a Division I softball scholarship, I would not have gone to school. I was the first in my family. So I wanted better, right? I can remember my mom at once a month sitting in this recliner that was her favorite chair and doing the bills. And, this is way before online anything, right? And they're stacked up everywhere. And, she's got her little calculator out. And I'm like, you know what? I don't want that. I want to do I want to better myself. I want to make money. And we don't have time in this podcast for that. But like, women are often frowned upon for saying that they want to make money and they want to be wealthy. If a guy does it, that's considered go-get-emness. If a girl does it, it's considered, sort of, gauche. But I wanted money. So I went to college, and because I was an athlete, the military and police departments from the area, I went to college in Fairfax, Virginia, they would come and recruit female athletes because, one, you have to pass the physical, and two, if you have a degree, you can actually get promoted, right? And it was hard back then in 1993 to find folks who had degrees and were joining the police force and or the military. So Montgomery County, Maryland actually was where I was a cop. If you know anything about DC, Virginia, DC, and Maryland all touch each other. And so I worked in Maryland, but on the DC line. So long story longer is I found that, like I said before, I just didn't fit into the mold of being a cop. But what I learned was invaluable and has carried me through my life. I learned how to have a high EQ, and that was more important than anything else I could do, which was to like sort of read the human condition as quickly as you possibly can, because for fear sounding dramatic, it could mean your life or somebody else's. So that was the biggest lesson I took away from being a police officer, and frankly is probably still serving me to this day as my biggest asset as an entrepreneur. And I don't even know if I can call myself that anymore, because I feel like I'm just a CEO now. I'm just like in spreadsheets and doing yuck. You know what I mean? But
you graduated to the dark side.
Yeah. But interestingly, to close this story, I graduated. And on the same day I graduated college, I had to go take my psychological test for the police department because I needed to make money. I had to pay rent. And I remember coming home that night, my mom goes, what do we do this college thing for if you were just going to be a cop? And I was like, well, that's a good point. But it taught me a lot of, and even today, Ryan, someone will be like, this is the worst day. They didn't sign the contract when they were supposed to, or the accounts receivables is out of whack. And I'll be like, you know what? I had a bad day when someone stabbed me in my right ankle. So, in the perspective, right? So those are the things that being a police officer for 5 years helped me with. I wouldn't say I was drawn to that profession specifically, but I loved the idea of helping people, which still translates today.
I love that. And it reminds me of a quote. I don't know where I read it, but it goes something like, when I die, I hope what people say is that nothing was above me and nothing was beneath me.
Yes, because I live in Tucson, as you know, there's a toast, and they say it in Spanish and I can't, but it's never above you, never below you, always with you.
You're going to make me tear up, Cindy. We're only like 20, almost 30 minutes in. You're going to make me tear up.
Don't cry.
I love that about you. And I also think that it uniquely, I think your cop background has made you a good salesperson. And when we hear that word, by the way, I know some people say, oh, I never want to be a salesperson. But at the end of the day, we're all salespeople. We're either salespeople of ourselves, our companies, our families. There's a certain amount of marketing that we all do to get ahead in the world. And I think about the evangelistic nature of the work you've been doing since 2018 and sort of, the number of phone calls that you made or the pitches that you made where people didn't get it and the ratio of that to the people who did. Early days, what was that ratio like?
1 to 50, probably.
And what is it like today?
1 out of 5.
Yeah. I mean, somewhere in there is a resilient story, but it's also a form of sales that you do very naturally. Tell us where that comes from. And I'm sure Riley has a lot to do with that. Maybe some other personal beliefs that have to do with that, but where does that resilience come from?
Oh, I mean, I don't like to be pigeonholed into this, but if you look up my name, you're going to see it. But I really believe that growing up gay in a Irish Catholic family, I had to be resilient. I went to Catholic school my whole life. And so imagine it's hard now. It's hard to just grow into your sexuality, whether you're LGBTQ, straight, however you identify, but to grow into your sexuality and be told that it's a sin it takes a whole lot of resilience. And I mean, I'm fortunate that I was sort of born with it a little bit. And I always just thought I was the best at everything. And the other thing too, is I'm one of those people, I don't know, everyone knows them in their lives where you drink a soda and maybe it's the new probiotic soda at Whole Foods. And I will come in this place and tell every single person that it's the best and they have to go try it. And I'll believe it with my whole soul. Right. And so
the full body sale.
Full body. You got to try this probiotic. I mean, so this is how I've been since I was little, and just really had to believe that I wasn't wrong, and that I wasn't born, sinful, and that because it's not that I chose it. In fact, someone always said, well, when did you know you were gay? Which I think is so funny. But when I knew I wasn't the same was my sister and I were laying on the floor. And back then that's what you did. You laid on the floor and, watched your TV and both of our hands were behind our head and the bionic man and the bionic woman were getting married. So this dates us. Okay. But it was a big thing. It's a big show. And everybody's been waiting for years for the two of them to get married. And my sister goes, I can't wait to get married. And she had to be 6. And I was 9. And I was like, I don't think I'm ever going to get married. And I had no idea. But, in there was something that was telling me that, I wasn't the same. And so, resiliency was probably born into my DNA, just like being gay.
Yeah, no, I see that. I would also observe that a lot of founders that we meet and, in our firm at Rally Day Partners, being a by founders, for founders shop, we meet so many founders. I mean, we probably meet 300 founders a year. And the one thing they all have in common is some chip on their shoulder. Mm-hmm. It's so interesting. And that chip on their shoulder comes from their life experiences, whatever they may be. The other thing I would observe is more of a human condition observation insofar as many of the founders have these incredible strengths that come from that chip on their shoulder, but also baggage,
of course.
Things that they have to learn to let go of so that they can fully realize the potential of their essence. Talk to us a bit about your journey from, being a founder to being a a real boring CEO. I say that like with all love. But a lot of the people who are going to listen to this podcast are founders, and they're going through this metamorphosis of trying to shed the baggage that goes with that chip on their shoulder, while also making sure they don't lose the magic of that chip on their shoulder. You did a beautiful job of that. I mean, I saw you grow. You were one of these CEOs. And again, I was kind of on the sidelines just watching you, and it was so fun to watch. But it seemed like you were growing faster than the business. And for those of you who are unaware on this podcast, Pix was growing at like 100% a month.
Yeah, it's true.
Which meant Cindy Jordan was growing, basically doubling her ability every month. What were some of the things that you had to let go of, and some of the things that you had to grow into during our time together and now beyond? Talk to us a little bit about the founder's chip on their shoulder, and on reflection, what you had to do to grow quicker than your business.
I wish I had enough perspective while I was in it, Ryan, to write down, hey, these are the 3 things that I think were so profound in making that what I call crossing that chasm. But here are the, necessity is the most important driver of making changes quickly. And it was necessary that I did it. And the reason I knew it was necessary that I did it, and I promise for anyone listening, I'm not shamelessly plugging Rally Day. I'm telling my story. But Nancy was my mentor at the firm, and she was one person that went from idea back of the napkin to selling her company for, 1.9 billion or some crazy number. And so she had to reiterate her existence many, many times. And she really she helped me a lot. I mean, helped me at 6 o'clock in the morning, helped me at 11 o'clock at night. I'd be like, I remember when it came time to sort of shed the folks in our company that were very well suited for early stage startup, but weren't suited for where we were going. And it hurt my heart like so much. I just couldn't even get my head around it. And Nancy's like, Cindy, I remember when I took my second private equity round, I almost had to let go of, half of my leadership team. And I thought to myself, what a bitch. Like, who would do that, right?
I'm sure you told her that.
Well, I didn't, but I did later. But if for anyone who knows Nancy, she's the furthest thing from being a bitch in the world. But what she was telling me was that it's okay if people can't iterate with the company. And actually, she gave me permission to say, I can't iterate with the company. And I think that that's the number one reason why I iterated quickly, because I wasn't done. I didn't want to be done. I also picked a successor. And I know that sounds crazy because I'm in it till the next event. But picking a successor is one of the most important things that you can do. And even if you don't know who they are, you can pick what they should look like. I'm fortunate enough to have the person inside the company that I think, and she may or may not choose to do it, but who could run it. And so I kind of went from I'm making all the decisions to, passing off responsibility, letting go, not being as controlling. And then the hardest part of what I did was not being as accessible. I know that sounds nuts because I just talked all about authenticity, but if everybody feels like Ryan, when you guys invested, I think we had 30 employees and now we have 300 and some. If all 300 employees feel like they can walk in the CEO's door and complain about their manager, complain and do this and get this overturned and I need a raise or I'm walking on and on and on and on, well, you're going to have anarchy, right? You have to trust your leaders. And so I think that was a big part of crossing the chasm was necessity. I was not ready to be done. So I had to move myself into a whole different job.
Let's talk about that job because, as you know, we have a framework around individual contributor, leader, leader of leaders. And the
Right.
chasm that you're talking about, I think, is that leap from individual contributor to leader of leaders. And as you become more distant from, the people that might otherwise talk about those things, there's an identity shift. You don't get to go home and say, I did this or I did that. It's more like I set the table and allowed people to be their best and take pride in the contribution of others. And I can totally see, and within a year or two of us meeting, you made the shift from individual contributor. I'm selling picks. Picks is services. I'm out there. I'm doing my thing. Then you went to leader, which is I'm putting a team together to do that for us in service to our mission. To then leader of leaders, which is I'm basically here to make sure that these very talented people can be best supported to be able to do their best work. That's an identity shift. Did you struggle with that at all in terms of your identity? I mean, when you became a leader of leaders, and I know there's not a graduation date, but was there a moment where you felt like, oh my gosh, like I'm not talking about maybe at night with Annie about what I accomplished, but I'm talking about what my team accomplished and how I set them up for success. Like, when did that happen, and how did that shape how you viewed yourself?
I mean, I honestly think it happened with the Rally Day investment, because we grew so significantly then, and I had folks that had been there and done that and were like, hey, Cindy, this is the infrastructure you have to put in place in order for everyone to be successful. And if you're not going to do it for yourself, like do it for the people that you really care about that are on this ride with you. And so I was very motivated, not just for myself, but for the people that were on the ride with me. It's, it is, I always say this, Ryan, I think the best way I gave myself the CEO title when I started the company. Founder, co-founder, and CEO. How easy was that? Put a thing on my desk that says I'm CEO, comma, bitch. Like, okay, so I'm the CEO, right? Like,
well, Nancy Phillips put do epic shit on her desk.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
You guys are kindred spirits.
But I became the CEO when after taking the first real money I'd ever taken in any of the companies and the two companies I've done, we were on a mission to do it again, to sell, to have another event, and that did not require the entrepreneur. That required a real life CEO who was going to steer the ship in the right direction. And we, as we use the framework of tail feathers. It's one of the first days that I ever worked with Rally Day. We're in a conference room and there's pictures of two peacocks on this massive TV screen who are getting ready to mate. And I literally started looking around the room to see if you guys were like doing some personality test to see what our reactions were to the birds, But what you were showing us is that, these two birds, the only way they find their lifelong partner is by the color of their tail feathers, these peacocks. And you asked me, what are your tail feathers going to look like at the next event? So we did that for the company, but I also did that for myself. What do I have to look like at the next event in order for us to get the best possible outcome, make the most money, set my people up for success, and really, again, I feel like I'm the best at whatever I do. So I wanted to be the best at that too. I was going to achieve. I'm kidding. I hope for anybody out there. I realize people are better than me. I won't tell you that, Ryan, that I played a charity basketball tournament with my son last week, and my son's 15 and he plays high school basketball. And I was the only mom there were lots of dads, and there were some middle school kids that were playing, and I let this middle school kid take a shot on me, and he scored a 3-pointer. And, this is a tournament for Make-A-Wish Foundation. So from that point on, every middle schooler or kid that was shorter than me that wanted to shoot, I blocked it right back in their face. And that is exactly who I am.
Say no more. Say no more. It's such a beautiful story. It's such a beautiful story and so appropriate. Tell, if you would, I know you've had some role models. Sometimes role models can be negative and positive. In my own life, I have some people that I looked at in my industry, especially in private equity, and I was like, I never want to be that way.
Yep.
And so this notion of reverse and positive role models is a thing. Pick your poison, but what were some of your role models, either positive or negative, or people that believed in you early days in the Pick story that helped you get through those moments of doubt as founders often find themselves in? And for me, I would just say during the day, there were so many problems when I was a founder that I didn't have time to have a pity party.
Mm-hmm.
It was sort of just deal with the shit. And whatever that was, I dealt with. But at night, I'd finish dinner, I'd wind down, I'd go to bed. Sometimes I'd fall asleep pretty quickly, but I'd ultimately wake up at 2 a.m. or whatever and have like these demons, these doubting demons that took control of me until I woke up. And sometimes I wouldn't go back to sleep. But what got me through those times were the people that I knew either were kind of maybe believed in me more than myself, or I knew that if I failed would still be there for me. Can you share some of those people in your life, Cindy, that helped you get through those dark moments when your ambition for Pix was greater than people's belief in even the concept?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two questions there. The last one is like, who got you through the dark days? Well, that's my family. I would be lying if I tell you that there isn't a few times a week that I don't wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and do exactly what you're talking about. But it is a very, very lonely existence. And I'm not saying that lightly because obviously we're treating loneliness. But if it succeeds, I'm the hero. If it fails, it's my fault. In the end, everything, whether I made the decision or not, I'm approving of that decision. And so on and on and on. What the truth of the matter is that while everyone has loved me through this, I really believe that the way that you get through what we're doing is that you have to know that there's something greater than yourself, or else the loneliness, the anxiety, the stress, it will kill you. As far as people who believed in me when no one really would have, one of my jobs here in Tucson, and I did it for 5 years, was as a lead strategist at a marketing agency. Just like you talked about me being a good salesperson, I was very good at like taking business problems and figuring out a way to sort of cut through the noise and get them to the end buyer, right? And so I did that for the portfolio inside of this firm. I would go in and help people figure out what to sell, how to sell it, the messaging, that kind of thing. And in 2008, the whole market crashed, and marketing agencies, as we know them, would never be the same. But my marketing agency was run by these two women, and this is crazy, but one of them ended up working for me 3 years here at Pix. And so there were 60 some people at the agency, and they laid off everybody but 3. And I was one of them that didn't get laid off. And so the next morning Oh, by the way, it was like St. Patrick's Day that they laid everyone off. So we went out and got hammered. I mean, like to the point where I can't even talk about how I felt the next day. So I'm driving to work the next day and I call both of the owners, Leslie and Colleen, and I say, hey guys, can we meet for coffee? You know, there's a coffee shop right near the office. So we do. And I said, listen, this sucks. I know that your whole business, just what you've worked for years for, and it may not bounce back. I know you just had to lay all these people off. But I have an idea. There's no better time to start a business than in a recession. And I had represented a very big healthcare client at that time. And so without boring everybody about the idea of the first company, in that moment at that coffee shop, each of them wrote me a check for $50,000 and we started the first company. And so that's belief.
Wow.
Yeah.
And in the PICS journey, and I promise you, I only have one more question after this. 2018, it's now 2024.
Mm-hmm.
If you could have an opportunity on this podcast to thank somebody who's been by your side through the thick and thin of that journey, who would it be? And what did he or she give you that without whom you wouldn't be where you are today?
So it's actually two people, one celestial and one actually here. The one here is unequivocally my wife. I mean, think about, you know, when I tell you that we would go to the grocery store sometimes during the first company and have to take things off the conveyor belt because we couldn't afford them. And all Annie ever did was support me and still does. Anne's the co-founder of both of those companies. Don't get me wrong. She's not home taking care of the kids and the dogs in the garden. Like she's in the business working as hard as I am. And she's incredible. Celestially, I say it was my mom. She was without a shadow of a doubt, the strongest person I've ever known. And so, in fact, right before she died, and she died when I was in the middle of the first company, she sent me a letter in the mail and I have it next to my desk. I'm going to read you one sentence and this will encapsulate everything. She said to me, she said, in many ways, I wish I could be more like you. You make me very proud of the woman that you have become. I guess all of that fighting was really worth it. Love, Mom.
Wow.
So I think about what she did for me. Like she never gave me a pass. Like we were always just like, you know, grinding and going there and fighting and loving and making up and forgiving and all the things that I love about myself as a human, my mother taught me. So Mom and Annie.
I knew I was not going to get through this without having a tear. But that is so touching. And similarly, my mom, who I was just with moments ago, about an hour ago, she just had surgery, big surgery. And
Sorry to hear that.
she was telling me I needed to get back to work. So, I mean, you know, our moms and dads are really important in our lives. And I just, if this was, I guess it'll soon be Mother's Day and Father's Day. It's an appropriate time for all of us listening to thank our mothers and fathers for both the baggage and the assets, you know, like
100%.
We get both of them and they're both important and they're both valuable. Cindy,
you know, Ryan,
sorry,
I don't
go
mean
ahead.
to cut you off, but I think it's important because you've said this now twice in the podcast, building a business, being in a marriage, having children, being a mom or dad, being a son or daughter. If you have an experience that doesn't come with baggage, I think you should question it because of course, like this, you know, and this is the problem I think with like the generation that we're raising. And I have a 15-year-old is like the bad is equally as important as the good in making real relationships and driving to real success.
I love that. And I agree wholeheartedly, whole body. So one of the things we're trying to do with this podcast is we have a lot of listeners who aren't founders.
Mm-hmm.
they may have a very big job. They're prestigious in their work, but they're in a large organization or they're part of a bigger thing, just not as personal. But what are some of the attributes that you look for in the people that you invite to join you on the PICS journey? And what advice could you give folks who have, a career, but aren't founders, so that they can show up in a way that is just as powerful, maybe, as a founder does when they walk in the office?
I mean, I guess I would just bring it back to where we started, right? Like I feel like any kind of leader who's, running folks, big jobs, et cetera, that the way to lead in my mind is by influence and not by authority. And if you do that, you're going to endear someone. You could very well be building a future leader and not even know it. And it, it all comes back to the authenticity you and I talked about. It's crazy because the bigger job that you have, like the more they want to sort of suck that out of you. Like, do say this, don't say that. Do this, don't write. Everything you write gets rewritten and wordsmith and all this other kind of stuff. And I think that that's literally like sucking the life out of business. It doesn't mean that you should say whatever you want or you should, be aggressive. In other words, I'm not talking about doing HR violations, right? I'm just saying, when did we get so over-programmed that we can't even be ourselves? And if more people were able to do that, I think the whole workplace, whether it's entrepreneurship or big jobs in corporate America, would be better. Or police departments.
I love that. Well, it's sort of I'm looking at the clock now. It's 57 minutes and 17 seconds.
Okay.
It went by like a flash. I knew it would. I guess I would like to end by just sharing with you very personally that you and Annie have influenced my expectation for a partnership and a marriage and love. And also that you as an executive has taught me how to strive for more every day, to be myself. I often do something stupid and I think, what would Cindy be saying to me right now?
That's so funny.
I also think about when I do something great, how much you would love on me and the hug that you would give me, which is so real. And I would say that on behalf of Reality Partners, you have set a really high standard for what a founder is. And as you said, the celestial part of it and the actual part of it. And I just wanted to have a moment of gratitude for what you've given me personally and what you've given to Rally Day. And you have forever changed the way that we show up as a firm and our expectations of ourselves in terms of meeting your expectations. And it will be a legacy asset. And I just want to say thank you on behalf of everyone here. You've touched all of our hearts and souls. So I just want to say thank you.
Well, Ryan, for fear of making the Mutual Admiration Society, I mean, I am equally as moved and by you and the partners there. We are not here today without you. I'm not the leader I am without you. Our company doesn't even talk the way that we talk without you guys. Our beliefs, our behaviors, our culture, et cetera. I'm super grateful. And for entrepreneurs that are out there listening, because this was one of the questions we didn't get to, and I know we're at the minute, but there was a question about how do you choose a PE partner? And this is my best advice. You look at the bids that you get or the people who are interested in investing, and you take the biggest, darkest magic marker you can possibly find and you wipe out the number. Don't worry about the number. And then go through and talk about how you felt about those people as people. Do you want to go to dinner with them? Do you want to talk to them? Would you call them on, 3 days after the worst day of your life? And I'm referring to when Riley passed away and I called Nancy, like on and on and on. That's the way to pick a PE partner, because the numbers, that's the easy part. And candidly, a little bit inconsequential to your success. That's how I feel about Rally Day. I know you guys stretched. We were way outside your investment thesis, but we were meant to be on this journey together. And that's why it was.
Yeah, either soulmates or twin souls.
Or big sister, whatever.
Big sister, yeah. I mean,
I made fun of your dyed hair. You called me old. It's good. It's good.
I always know, though, that you're going to put me in your arm and give me a noogie sandwich.
There you go.
I'll take pride in that. Please give our best to Annie. Please give our best to Christina.
Yep.
Who's the COO of Pix Health.
Well, now she's the president. She got promoted. Yes.
Excuse me. Amazing leader. And I am so honored to have had this time with you, Cindy. Thank you very much. If Nancy were here, she would have me in a headlock. Yes. And you guys could pound on me together. But I'm really grateful. I'm so happy for you all, and cheers to your continued success.
Thanks, Ryan. I really appreciate it.